Hello, everyone. Very good afternoon to you all. Please bear with us for 2 minutes while we wait for everyone to join in. We'll be beginning shortly. Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone, once again. Thank you so much for taking the time out from your busy schedules today to join us for today's Expert Insight session. My name is Gunjan Saha, and I lead marketing initiatives here at Vimo. Now, before we begin, I hope everyone is able to hear me and see my video clearly. If at any point in time you see there's a disturbance in the audio or video, please do let us know via the chat option, which you'll see in the Zoom menu below. To tell you a bit about Vimo, Vimo is the distribution excellence cloud for financial services sales and distribution. We've worked very closely with over 60 plus leading banks, insurers, and financial institutions to strengthen their sales and distribution processes. The Indonesian market has really been optimistic about the post COVID-19 recovery, but population has also been mindful of how they're spending the money. Agencies continuing business as usual to finance innovations, digital transformation, and improvising existing fundamental business models have still seen a decline in sales and distribution in the time as you all expected. But building from this context today, in this session, we'll be discussing how 2020 has impacted the insurance sector in Indonesia. How did insurers react to the changing needs of their customers? And what are the top priorities for the upcoming months in the region? Along with that, we've also be sharing some of our research and insights on what are the current opportunities that are up for grabs in the Indonesian market today. Just a couple of pointers so that we can provide you the best experience today. In case you have any difficulty with the audio or video streaming, please do let us know via the chat option in the Zoom menu. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can send them to the panelists who I'll be introducing shortly via the question and answer button. Also, there's no need to take any notes in this presentation. We'll be sharing a copy of the deck and the related material over email shortly after the webinar. So without much ado, I'll quickly introduce your hosts for today. We have with us Rajesh Sablok, who is the Chief Customer Officer here at Vimo. He is a veteran in the financial services industry in Asia Pacific and brings 20 plus years of experience working closely with leading banks and insurance companies in the region. Prior to joining Vimo, Rajesh served as the APAC head of strategy and innovation for Willis Towers Watson. That's a global multinational risk management, insurance brokerage, and advisory company. He has assisted leading financial services organizations on market entry, business and product strategy, distribution strategy, mergers and acquisitions, bank assurance optimization, and other bespoke consulting requirements. Rajesh, thank you so much for taking the time out today. I hope you're doing
You're
well.
welcome, Gunjan. Yeah, look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Rajesh. Joining Rajesh today, we also have Roshan Karyappa, who is the Director of Marketing here at Vimo. Roshan has led multiple cross-functional teams across sales, product, and marketing for over a decade now. He works closely with early stage startups, and at Vimo, he leads the marketing team and is responsible for scaling the company's growth across India, Southeast Asia, and the US. Roshan holds a bachelor's degree in engineering and is passionate about economics, entrepreneurship, SaaS, leadership, and podcasts. Roshan, thank you for joining the webinar today.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Gunjan. Hi, Rajesh. How are you?
All good, Roshan.
Fantastic. Can't wait
Right.
to get
So
started.
really excited to whatever Rajesh and Roshan would have to share with us. So I'd hand it over to you.
Gunjan, can I share my screen?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, let me know if this is visible. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfectly clear.
All
All
right,
right.
so we have plenty to talk about. This is a very interesting topic, and who better to speak to than Rajesh, of course. So, Rajesh, I mean, looks like every time we should catch up, the team schedules a webinar, right?
I guess so. Yes.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, it's such a learning experience every time we speak, right? And today we're going to be talking about empowering Indonesia's insurance agency workforce specifically. For those of you who have joined in, I just want to set the expectation in terms of what we're going to cover today. So first, we'll give you a little bit of a background in terms of what changed in 2020. Of course, all of you know what happened, but how did customers and insurers respond to that change, and what we see as an outlook continuing from there for 2021 and the future, right? Then we can talk about the agency workforce specifically, in terms of what the IT priorities could be like, and some levers for improvement that you can optimize in your companies, right? And then finally we'll end with how Wimo helps you establish a winning agency workforce, and also cover a couple of case studies along the way. So this is what we have planned. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to move on to a little bit of background. So, what changed in 2020? Well, plenty of changes happened. This is the biggest crisis since the Asian financial crisis of 97, I think. For the first time, Indonesia's GDP contracted, I think, in over 20 years. And of course, the difference was that this was a pandemic and people's movement was restricted, right? So, Rajesh, you see all of those different points there on screen. Anything that you'd like to pick up on?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I mean, this is unprecedented, right? People have in any market. I think no market was prepared for this.
Yeah.
If you talk about in various situations, the more emerging markets or let's say established markets, this particular pandemic has affected everybody. I mean, effectively, countries like US and Europe have seen much more devastating impact than let's say other countries as well. So this has been a situation which was unprecedented, and there have been cascading impacts of this, right? So for instance, certain industries which got severely impacted, which were basing themselves on a business model which was related to face interaction and movement and meeting customers, right? So when there is a lockdown, really all this model, then you can't really go and talk to your customers, and that had a major impact. Because of which a leading impact was that the business fell for these companies, the profitability dropped, losses started to mount. So a lot of businesses also had to either cut salaries for people or let people go as well, right? Which eventually meant that the cash flows got impacted for end users. Now if you look at insurance or any other industry, the customers are people like you and me, and if we are facing some financial distress and because of the situation, then we tend to then hold our finances, right? We don't want to
Right.
spend that money. So those are the things which then impacted the business overall as well. So yeah, so it's been a wide ranging impact, one thing leading to the other and to the next, and obviously the new models have come in. Things that you have on the slide talking about financial markets, steep drop in these markets have been seen world around. New policies sold, so most industries, sorry, most countries have seen a decline in the number of policies sold, including Indonesia. And there were some numbers in terms of what kind of the drop that was. And the other thing we saw was, as we said, with respect to how do you now engage, right? So everything was virtual. So the companies who had a framework already available were benefited. So depending on what stage of your life cycle you are with respect to your digital adoption, uh, the impact was different. So companies who were ahead on the curve felt lesser impact, but companies who were behind on the curve and had to invest in putting this up in the first instance were suffering a bit more than the others.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and digital technologies obviously is the name of the game now, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mentioned this. So we interviewed about 16 of India's top IT leaders in financial services some time back, and one of the things that they said quite consistently across board was the fact that this pandemic catalyzed a lot of changes, right? Whether it was remote work or digital adoption and so on. So I think that was one positive to come out of this crisis in that sense, and we will talk about that in particular as we move forward. Uh, the response to this crisis was amazing, right? I mean, people were really resilient, and especially the way these large organizations pivoted and acted nimble was amazing. I mean, we had to shift about 250 people to remote operations, and it was a challenge. I can't imagine how some of these organizations moved hundreds, if not thousands, of people to remote almost overnight, right? And then the many challenges associated with it, ensuring access to information, continuing communication with customers, so on and so forth. In a sense, I think digital became front and center, as you rightly put it, a while back. Organizations and people who had invested in digital earlier had that vantage point and kind of embraced this change to make the best of it, right? Rajesh, we've seen that digital has become front and center, but this fact about customer focused solutions, right? The fact that organizations strived really hard to put their customers at the center of their operations. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, eventually, whether it is the current COVID situation or not, most organizations are moving towards customer centric models, and they were doing that. And as you were saying previously, digital was on the agenda for the board of directors of these organizations, but maybe somewhere it was maybe fifth or sixth, let's say, on the list of items that were critical for them. And what happened because of COVID is that really moved up and became the first agenda, and in the board as well. So the companies were really looking at ensuring that they are able to now connect to their customers. Now, given that the access that they had through distribution channels, face-to-face interactions, and insurance is something which is sold and not bought, which meant that there is multiple meetings that need to happen, multiple conversations that need to happen before a sale can happen. Now, if that is going to not happen on a face-to-face basis, you definitely need something which is of interest to the customers themselves. So have a platform which is focusing on driving solutions which customers currently are interested in. And I think that given COVID, one good thing that also happened is the importance of health insurance, the importance of certain forms of insurance, right? Like that went up. So which means people were asking insurance companies to get those kind of solutions. So those kind of customer focused solutions came into play, and companies use marketing efforts and digital platforms to reach out to these customers. They also helped, like you said, digital access, right? Providing their agents and others digital access so that they could use social media relationship that the agents might have for prospecting purposes. So you need to get a framework which helps them to share content with their customers on social media and create leads from then on and service them, right? And then those meetings can be held on my Zoom, like we're doing today. So it's not face to face, but it's virtual, but still it is, you're interacting with the customer. Things like these frameworks were set in place, and the intent was also to empower the customers so that they can also benefit from the digitization process. So if there's anything that the customer is searching on the web, and there were models around of online to offline which were enabling interaction with the customers. If the customer were dropping off, and the customers and the telecalling centers can reach out to these people offline and ensure that the sale process can be completed. And more so, the microsites which were feature rich, which had workflows which are built out, where a customer who's interested in a few things can actually go through the entire process and buy a policy. Challenge in Indonesia previously was for sale of insurance policies which were complex in nature, wet signature was required. So which meant that you could do the entire process online, but you still had to then print out the application form, and somebody has to get a wet signature of the customer before the policy can be issued. I'm not sure if those regulations have changed now. Simple products can be bought online, let's say personal accident cover, or a simple health travel policy, etc. So those are simple products. Hospital cash, you can buy these simple products online. But where you get into complicated products, the requirement from the regulator was that you needed to have a wet signature. Many countries have done away with that. I'm sure Indonesia is also on track of doing that if they've not done already. But that will actually be a shot in the arm for the industry, because then customers who are interested can actually have the entire cycle online. It'll become, the customer will be better empowered actually if that
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. No, and the fact that you're going to see a lot more on demand insurance as well, right? Rising from this insurance for very specific purposes. From my perspective, I think, there was both sales and distribution side, of course, which we have covered, right? In terms of response, and also the product side, right? I mean, couple of examples. Insurers were offering tailor-made policies like PT Equity Life Indonesia provided a COVID-19 protection care product free to Speedwork AutoCare's customers, right? And then AIA released AIA Power Pro Life, where customers could buy a life coverage that also covers against COVID-19 and terminal illness, right? So even the product side innovation was pretty interesting to see, Um, all right, so moving on from this, you know, what are the top priorities for 2021 as a result of this? If you look at it, the market is still very underpenetrated, right? Indonesia is still underpenetrated. But given how digital has grown, I think that growth will get accelerated manifold, right? Because the physical presence is not required, and also the fact that the population as such will become more digitally educated. So in all of this, I think how organizations operate remotely and manage this whole distributed fashion of work will become super critical, right, Rajesh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, given that last year companies have realized, and industries have realized that the only way they could, I mean, they could access customers or manage teams is going to be virtual and remote, right? So digital becomes a very key framework that they need to have in the organization to support that. So that goes without saying. So the new terminologies that are coming up, right? Phygital, which is basically physical and digital. So it's a combination of the two. So it may happen that as certain markets have opened up and certain meetings are being allowed, but the digital underpinning the entire process, whether it is on the client facing side as the sales process, or at the back end. And you spoke about claim automation previously as well, so entire back end processes too, right? So everything would have an impact, and digital is going to play a major role in all of this. And like you said, digital can be and is a very great enabler for the sales team. Agents on the ground, if they have digital capabilities which enables them to have conversation with their client, capture that information, pass on that information digitally to the back office for underwriting purposes, get a result very quickly, and then close the deal with the customer. All of this can happen in shorter time frames. So all of this, right? Current content that can be shared with customers, content for themselves, that they can learn.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, a very fair point, that Indonesia is a large country, in terms of population as well, right? So I think fourth largest, if I'm not wrong. So, and then it's also a archipelago with so many islands, I think 17,000 islands. While core customers is in Java and Sumatra. So the two that's where most of the population is also. But if you look at the digital adoption, I mean, I was doing some research and I found that from internet adoption itself, 73.7% of the population in adult population in Indonesia access internet almost on a daily basis. So while they are 34th in the world, it comes to that, and which means the 26.7% of people that they're not accessing internet in itself is a huge population, and there is an opportunity for that to grow as well. And that itself is the seventh largest population opportunity wise. So what we are saying is that the people are using internet, they're using mobile. In fact, on mobile, time spent on internet and mobile, Indonesia is fourth in the world. On an average, 5 hours 4 minutes are being spent per person on internet using mobile technology.
Right.
Imagine, right? But what are they doing in these 5 hours? Most of that is surfing, social media stuff. How much of that gets used for e-commerce is actually lesser. So that will actually come up based on the once they have confidence on the system and they see that okay, there is
Yeah.
less risk in this, and I think that will grow. I mean, that's how that's the journey, right, which
Yeah.
countries have seen. So
Yeah.
yeah, Indonesia has huge opportunity.
No, that's a very fair point, right? Because I think any internet user, new internet user, will go through that journey of entertainment, social media to education and e-commerce and empowerment, right? I mean, we're seeing that in India with the Geo users that have come on board, nearly around 200 to 300 million who've come on board in recent times. Uh, so all of this means that the agency workforce has to change, right, and has to scale and adapt to these changes. Uh, Again, needless to say, IT will be the backbone, not just from an operations perspective, but also even from a strategic growth perspective, right? And here again, Rajesh, what are some of these new tools and technologies that will come to the fore, from an agency empowerment perspective?
Yeah, so I think, as we said, I mean, the whole idea is now agent is a lone warrior. If you look at an agent, right, he's a lone warrior on the ground. He's going knocking doors, meeting people, trying to understand their requirements and pitching insurance policies. Now, in a traditional model, he may be using his own, let's say, a notebook where he's making notes on, which customer has he met, what has he spoken about, and what is their requirements. So all of this can be digitized for him. I mean, his activities, what he needs to do, can be digitized. Uh, Also, the interaction that he has with his managers can be, he can have a platform where he can actually reach out to his managers, and the managers can look at what he's doing, what are the areas that the agent might need support, basis what they're seeing with what the activities the agent is doing, right? So, and then identifying bespoke training requirements for him. So entire training model can also get changed based on assessing actually what's happening on the ground,
Yeah.
and bespoke training modules can be created for them. um,
Right.
so all of this is going to help him with ensuring that, one, he becomes, his day in life becomes that much more simpler. He has more, because his mundane tasks can be automated. He can save time. This time that he saves, he can flow back into meeting more customers, so he can become more effective and more productive from that point of view. And he gets to improve because you're able to use digital tools and technology to look at what is the areas where he needs improvements. And operational efficiencies, obviously, like you mentioned, will also mean that he can, the entire process is very streamlined for him.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, optimizing processes is one thing, but then we'll also have to enable people to work remotely, right? Which means that we'll have to assume that, people will not bump into each other, that managers will not have physical access to some of their workforce. And, how do you enable someone to, how do you onboard someone, and then, how do you sort of enable them along the way to be successful becomes a key challenge that, IT will have to address. And some of the tools that we've been seeing in recent times will become imperative at this point of time to adopt, right? All right, so moving on from this, we will talk about some of the opportunities in the agency onboarding journey, where we see some scope for improvement, and which all these minor improvements that can cause massive outcomes for the insurer, right? So let's look at recruitment. And in recruitment, we have sourcing and allocation primarily, right? Usually, I mean, this is there's a lot of tribal knowledge concerning these processes, right, in terms of where you source and how you allocate. But then you can also use a lot of science and data to do this much efficiently, right? So whether it's like making it more seamless, and sourcing across portals and across channels in a unified fashion, or even assigning these agencies and assigning these things to the right relationship manager based on again hard data points, right? Rajesh, do you see this recruitment as such as a key part of what basically mean what happens afterwards?
Definitely. See, the agency as a channel is a high churn channel also, because you will find that of the 10 agents who are recruited into a company, almost, let's say, 8 of them may not survive after the first year or 1.5 years. The reason is it's a very difficult product to sell, and most of the time in the first year they will sell products to the natural market, and thereafter die out, right? Because they can't
Yeah.
expand beyond that. Which is why recruitment is a continuous cycle within an insurance company, and it's very critical. And here what we're saying is, can we use technology to, previously what was happening, right? Previously the RMs were, word of mouth basis, where
Yeah.
they try and source agents to come and join them. So which restricts the number of people who you can have at the top of the funnel. With technology, if you're able to get more people to come in, and you're using the technology, and then you're able to refine the people who are coming in. You're able to have a workflow around this. You're able to tightly manage that workflow. So you will ensure that a continuous flow of people, and maybe over time you will be able to even assess what type of profile you're looking for, and
Exactly.
have that as a medium to ensure that you're screening candidates and getting those candidates who may be successful in the long run, right? So recruitment becomes a very important lever with respect to ensuring that you're getting people coming in the flow that you want, number of people that you want, so that the business can grow.
Yeah,
Definitely.
no, it's a very interesting point that you bring up. Understanding what successful means and abstracting those qualities helps a great deal in sourcing the right kind of agents and agencies, right? Yeah. Moving on to the next part, in terms of onboarding, right? I mean, again, now here there are a bunch of playbooks that you can actually leverage and basically use these to improve outcomes, right? And here again, where you intervene becomes a huge point of that can actually determine success and failure, right? A lot of the times, I mean, you tend to intervene when things have already happened in a post hoc fashion. But if you can preempt some of these behaviors, preempt some of these changes beforehand, and intervene at the right times during that onboarding journey, then it makes all of the difference, right, Rajesh?
Definitely. I mean, as we said, it's a tough profession, and so which also means that you need to be highly engaged. The managers who are onboarding the agents need to be regularly engaged with the agents, and ensure they are onboarding them with the communication, and giving them the necessary inputs that they need. And that's why I think cadences do help and playbooks do help. So there's something that they can look up to and follow, and focus on the right interventions and timely interventions.
Right. And then, of course, as you mentioned, I mean, recruitment, onboarding, sure, I mean, hire the right kind of agencies, and so on. But also, you need to enable them to be successful. And, going beyond that natural market for any of the agents in particular is a key thing, right? And helping them succeed in the first 30, 60, 90 days, right, makes all of the difference, because then you don't have the person toiling away for 4 to 6 months, getting disillusioned, and being and then you seeing a dip in the activities, and then realizing that, hey, this person has extinguished all of his resources, right? So yeah, I mean, again, the ramp time is super critical, right?
Definitely. And again, as you said, many companies would have done it already, as in they would have a 30, 60, 90-day plan, which is structured in a manner where you're training the agent on various, obviously, the products and the selling skills, etc. You're also then letting the agent go and work in the field, and then come back and look at what he's learned, and then train him further. So they would have their entire plan developed in a fashion where they're mixing classroom learning with on-job learning, and they do have teams with coaches and others defined. So that is definitely important. But more important is, how do you assess the impact of training? So that's
Yeah.
where, what are you training them on? How are they doing? Ensuring that you're assessing that, ensuring that, like you said, I need to be in the money
Hmm.
very to be interested. So if I'm not able to, if I have, my first five, six calls have been, which have not got any successful result out of this, I can lose my patience and I can leave. But I need to be in the money. How do we empower the guys and train the guys to ensure that they can land their first sale pretty quickly? I mean, obviously, that's why the natural market, so they can get that. And then how do they expand beyond that? So that
Right.
kind of, ramping up is important.
Yeah. No, I want to drill down on content to learn in particular, which we were discussing earlier as an important aspect as well, right? Because if you look at how people learn these days, it's a very need-based learning, right? I mean, think about, most of the new things that we learn. I mean, we simply Google it as and when there's a need for it, right? So the conventional way of, hey, here are 5 courses that you have to do, and then forget about all of that and then start executing will not work, right? I mean, so triggering the right kind of learning interventions becomes crucial, right?
Yeah, so like you said, it's very fair. I mean, one is that you want to have a general training program that everybody has to do, right? That's bringing everybody up to speed. Thereafter, when you talk about content to learn, is once they hit the field and we know what is their bespoke training requirement, and if you have modular training content available, which can be digitally, consumed, by the individual, which means you are now actually giving training programs which are relevant to support a certain need that has been identified. One, you need to ensure that you're able to identify that need. Second, you need to have a module which is going to cater to that particular need. Third, you should have a platform which enables that individual to access this training program at convenience that he may have and go through the
Right.
training. I think all of this, again, this is where the digital component comes into play. But definitely, content to learn is going to be a very critical component of improving the productivity of the salespeople, of the
Right.
agent.
Moving on, while recruitment and onboarding is important, the where the rubber meets the road is the whole relationship management as such, right? And here again, we've split the journey into planning, engagement, and performance management, right? Uh, in the planning stages, right? Again, here helping someone understand, how they can plan their day in order to be more productive is a key intervention, I feel, right? Because everyone wants to strive hard, everyone wants to be successful, but then mapping these outcomes and goals into activities that people can do on a daily basis becomes extremely important. And here again, Rajesh, some of the data points can be leveraged to better plan activities for these agents, right?
Definitely. I mean, as you said, if I have to sell something, I know that there are X number of steps that need to happen before I can go and eventually sell a policy. So these activities are very critical. They are the input variables which will define whether how successful a person will be. So ensuring that these are identified, and again, here's where playbooks can also help. So we can, or the management of the company would know what are the activities they want the agents to be doing, and then ensure that that gets auto calendared for them. They should be able to ensure that then also monitor that. The challenge that is happening in some cases is that while they tell the agent that you go to do a meeting, now he may leave the office for a meeting, but eventually did he do the meeting or not? We don't know. So the visibility around what's happening on the ground, and previously it was all reactive, right? So the next day the agent comes, you ask him what happened. But if you're having a visibility that actually what's happening on real time basis, and you can intervene and coach the guy at that point in time also helps. So here the planning from the planning point of view, very important for him to know what activities need to happen and need to be done, and we're able to monitor that and assess, what is the outcome of those activities, right?
Right. And typical insurance rep behavior is that, they don't tend to pre-plan some of these activities. It's all that happens during the day, right? So here again, bundling some of these activities together becomes so important, right? I mean, you spoke to X person, why not speak to someone else who's similar to that? Or you're in X location, why not meet someone else who's also in that location, etc. Right? Bundling these activities and making these agents productive becomes critical. Um, in the engagement side, again, here what we're saying is that there are certain playbooks that you can leverage, right, in a very seamless fashion to improve your outcomes, right? Whether it is, and one of the distinct aspects of being a financial services salesperson is that you're involved 360 degrees with the customer, right? Throughout the complete life cycle. You don't really just sell and move on. I mean, you're involved in the prospecting, sales, claims, servicing, everything, right? You are the face of the carrier for all effective purposes. And here again, how do you leverage some of these let's say operational things like services or claims as a point of delight to really improve your chances of a renewal or some kind of a cross sell and so on and so forth, right? So here again, Rajesh, these engagement playbooks become super critical in order to scale whatever is working for the best reps, right?
Yeah. So these playbooks get designed based on our learnings from the best in class, right? For the organization. So they understand that what the best in class agents are doing. And on the basis of what's working for them, these playbooks get designed as well. Plus also the knowledge of what's happening across board, right? Across the industry as well. And the facts that you're talking about, the whole intent of the engagement piece is to ensure that the agent is constantly in touch with his managers. He understand his support needs that the agent requires. Things like you mentioned previously, if he is going to a certain meeting and there is, or let's say he's not planned a meeting for the next day, there could be a nudge saying in your calendar we don't see any meetings. That also is a way to push the person to do more activities. Or if he's going for a meeting, like you said, if there's a gap of a couple of hours in between two meetings, here's a nudge saying there are other customers around. Would you want to meet them? So list of those customers. So those are the things that are pushing the person to be more engaged with the customers themselves, and also the managers having visibility and driving nudges from their side as well, right? What they want the agent to be doing.
Right.
Uh, we also did, I think you discussed about the remote agency management and stuff. So there are a lot of other technologies that are available today, given that if
Yeah.
you not have a face-to-face conversation, can you do it through different mediums, right? Like you said, social media, content to share through a virtual conversation that you have with the customers, etc. So those are again technology platform which is enabling these. And the important thing is if your platform is able to track these as well, trigger and track. I mean,
Yeah.
you have activities, and then you need to ensure that the activity is happening, and then you want to learn from the activity and the experience, and you then use the learning to improve. That's where
Right.
the nudges come in. So this
Right.
entire engagement is actually more bespoke to the individual himself. The system is learning from his own experience and enabling him to become better at it.
Right. Yeah, and as Rajesh mentioned earlier, it's important to understand the effectiveness of some of these interventions, right? And then being able to tie it to, what the person cares about at the end of the day, which is, how much he or she will make, right? So again, here it becomes super important to tie these incentives to the activities and then productivity and things to that effect, right? And as managers, intervening at the right point to make these agents successful becomes so much more critical. Rajesh, management as such has changed so much, right? In this whole remote context, we don't have the luxury of doing these morning huddles with our team in the office or whatever. Being a little preemptive in all of these interventions becomes super critical.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why that's why I think the morning huddles are very very critical from even from an agency point of view, right? Talking to your agents together, understanding what they have planned for the day, what needs to happen. So I understand, and most companies face this challenge, right? Because now with lockdown and everything has to happen remotely. But if your technology enables you to do that remotely as well, which is something that definitely is companies are looking at implementing and doing. So while they may not get together face to face, something that they can still do is remotely over a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams. They can still have their morning huddles, right? And that's important. The point you were making about this goals and incentives and performance management overall, right? And that's critical because end of the day, as you said very rightly, that everybody or an agent is in the business to earn money, and he needs to know. Obviously, when he sells policies, he gets commissions, but there are incentive programs and everything else also happening. So if there is visibility around, how far is he from his achieving his objective, and at any given point in time in a month, what is it that is to be done and should be done by him so that he can achieve the objective by end of the month. So that interaction saying, here is your goal, here is where you are with respect to your achievement. If you want to achieve the goal still, I mean, that's let's say 10 days left, you need to do these XYZ activities to ensure you achieve this. So
Yeah.
that intervention, that communication to help him make more money uh, can be data driven.
Right.
Previously, if you don't have visibility around these numbers, it was a challenge. Now
Right.
tools will be available to give you that visibility. The point you have written there on when to intervene, the
Hmm.
manager is ability to see these information and see also which area or which part of the sales process is an individual struggling and where does he need to intervene. And again, that he may not realize unless, let's say, the tool tells him, saying, this particular agent requires your assistance because we've seen that this particular person is challenged in this aspect of the sales process. So that's where data-driven decisions and data-driven, approaches are going to be that much more critical because the outcomes can be that much more, defined if you follow them.
Yeah. So this is, not just from a diagnostic perspective, even from a prescriptive perspective, right? In terms of what the person can do to improve their outcomes pretty dynamically, right? Um, and all of these interventions that we've mentioned here, right, in the last couple of slides, have some pretty wide-ranging impacts on top line directly, right? So let's look at a few of these impact studies that we have done, right? Uh, your top relationship managers are 10 times more effective than your average, right? This is consistent across deployments that we have seen. And typically the sales follows like a Pareto rule, where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your products or your salespeople, right? But it's a lot more skewed in terms of insurance. What we notice is, like, 95% or more comes from less than 5% of people who are successful in the organization, right? So here again, investing in understanding what these super successful 5% are doing can actually give you a lot of rewards, right? The conventional method of incentivizing the top performers, and then like the whole carrot and stick approach, where you let go of the bottom 10 or 15%, will not work. Actually, there's a whole gold mine at the middle of the pyramid that you really can improve by nudging these successful behaviors to the middle to the middle quartiles of performers, right, Rajesh?
Yes, I think that's how, if you look at the pyramid, like you rightly mentioned, the top performers. Now, if you look at from a improvement point of view, the delta improvement for a top performer is that much more smaller than the
Correct.
delta that you will have from the mid tier, right? And mid tier people are they just need, let's say, some support to move to the next level of productivity. And the number of people in that band are also
Hmm.
more than the number of people in that top of the pyramid, right?
Exactly.
Have
Yeah.
a larger workforce, which if even a slight improvement in their productivity can actually have a massive impact on the bottom line. So
Absolutely.
learning from what these best are doing and
Hmm.
use that knowledge to help the middle, uh, let's say everybody below, right, to improve from where they are, improves the overall average productivity of the organization by many folds.
Yep. And then here you see like impacts like renewal rates, right? And these are all best practices that we've noticed across deployments, right? So this is particularly interesting from a nudge perspective, right? Now, given that a relationship manager has 40 priorities in a day that he has to do, how can his time be more productively spent on the right things, right? And here you see the impact of nudging the person to push for renewal at the right time. It has a dramatic impact on this. So this again, Rajesh, proves the impact of some of these nudges that we were talking about, right?
Correct. I mean, this is, again, based on data that you can capture. If you previously, again, there was, if you're not capturing this information, you don't know what is the right duration when you should start following up for a renewal. Now, here you can see minus 60, minus 50, minus 40. So minus 40 days from the day the premium is due. If you're following up, the chances of renewal is much higher. So that so that is your sweet spot. So this is coming from, again, this is a data-driven insight which is coming from actual information. So this then becomes very powerful, because then if some agents are, let's say, the minus 200, minus 150, even minus 60 days, right? There are so many agents who may be following up minus 60 days. We should actually be telling them that you focus on other activities, and when you have to follow up on renewals, do that in minus 40, minus 30, right? Minus 40 days. So that 20 days they would have regularly followed up with a customer, they could have used for something else. So you can
Right.
see that has an impact not just on renewals but on productivity enhancement.
Right. And some of this is important in validating some of the tribal knowledge that might be in organizations itself, right?
Right.
Because instinctively, managers will know some of these things, that hey, probably 30 days before a renewal is the optimal time to nudge a customer, right? But then, I mean, seeing the data actually validate that helps a great deal in building that sort of institutional knowledge,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and here you see, like, how important 30, 60, 90 sort of a plan is in sort of ramping up agents, right? Again, this is data from a Waymo deployment. Rajesh, you want to talk us through this?
Yeah, so this is showcasing the amount of average number of leads that is generated per week per agent, and how this has improved over time. And again, this is based on having a playbook which talks about what needs to be happening in the 30, 60, 90-day period and even beyond, and where are the checkpoints where the managers are intervening. Having that playbook, you can see the from the first week and to the 12th week, which is the end of 3 months, the productivity has gone up more than double, right? In terms of average Ds that they were able to generate. And this again, the intent is over time, when we start to understand the behaviors and the profiles of the agents and what works for each one of them, the managers would be more empowered to bring this ramp up time, even make it even lesser. So which means maybe in 4 weeks time, can the zero point 0.5 go to zero point 0.8 rather than zero point 0.6? And then in 8 weeks time, 0.8 can become 1.1. So by 12 weeks, 1.1 could go to 1.5 or 2, right? So
Right.
that is the intention over time that we should be heading towards.
Right. And all of these outcomes have been proven for scale at some of the largest insurers across the world, right? And we'll see a couple of case studies specifically. Um, but then, let's get to how Waymo impacts this specifically. So our agency 360 solution basically helps you right from recruitment, onboarding, ramping, and so on, right? So uh, I won't go into too much of depth here. We'll be happy to provide a demo if you're interested. Please let us know, and then we could schedule, some time with a solution specialist to take you through this. Um, yeah, so we have an agency 360 solution that helps end to end, right? Both with your onboarding and your relationship management, right? Here are a couple of case studies that could be important. SBI Life is one of the largest insurers in India, right? And they have a very strong partnership focus. We work with 10,000 plus advisors in this organization, and I think visibility is at the core of what is required when you're operating at such a scale, right, Rajesh?
Definitely. I mean, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, the hierarchy goes up various levels, right? And everybody needs to have visibility on what's happening on the ground. So without a digital tool having that kind of visibility on actual activities that are happening, because everybody in the organization, the leaders, they understand that outcomes are dependent on input activities. If
Hmm.
we're not managing activities, outcomes can't be guaranteed. So having that visibility of the activity. So first level is visibility of what's happening. Second is whatever is happening, whatever activities are being done, are they the right kind of activities that need to happen? Third is how efficient these activities are in producing results. So you see there are layers of learning that happens. Once you start having the visibility, you will be able to evolve and ensure that the right kind of activities are being done by the people, the right amount of activities, the right quality of activity, and that improves your productivity over time.
Right. And there you see a 15% increase in revenue per advisor, which is pretty phenomenal actually. And their investment on Waymo has paid for itself more than 100 times, right? In that sense. All right, moving on. This is another pretty interesting case study of Future Generali, which is another large insurance organization. And here again, because they had distributed sales teams, it was difficult for people to have a micro view into activities, diagnose where there were leaks in the funnel, they had separate streams of leads coming in and maintaining data on a single platform, and then also ensuring that all of these leads were followed up in a seamless fashion, and their agents were productive was a super challenging process for them. And with Waymo, they were able to see some pretty amazing impact, right? So 69% reduction in the TAT, the turnaround time for a policy being sold. That means you're selling so much faster. 47% same day conversions. Again, these are amazing when you talk about the scale, right? Again, 16,000 people using it. So yeah, Rajesh, anything to add here?
Oh, yeah, I think the metrics are speaking for themselves. I think as we saw, this is achieved within 1 year post go live. So within these impacts have been within 1 year. Right? It also talks about how soon the impact can be visible if there is data which is data generated insights are coming through and visibility is made is available. So yeah, all great numbers here.
Right, fantastic. So before we move on, do we have any questions, Gunjan?
So I think that was a very detailed discussion which you were having, and that almost covered up each and every question which you have received on the presentation. But there's a very interesting question which I think it'll be great for us to talk about now, which is how can transitioning to a digital agent onboarding and engagement process actually help improve operational efficiencies for insurers? If Roshan Raj could share some thoughts on that.
Uh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the latter part of the question. Is it about improving operational efficiencies?
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. I think we have spoken about this in the presentation itself, where some of these, like let's say, onboarding process and stuff like that, which is heavily operational, right? I mean, if you look at a pre-COVID world, these were typically involved. These typically involved multiple meetings with the customer, and then getting documents, etc. All of these things, right? which can completely be digital at this point of time, or as Rajesh put it, phygital, right? So part digital and part physical. We're also seeing a lot of these automated claims underwriting solutions as well on the core side of things. Right, Rajesh, anything else that you would like to add on the operational side of things, like how we can improve efficiencies?
Yeah, I mean, see again, with respect to any operational process, if you can automate the processes, it helps you cut down the errors, the chances of errors that happen, and then it helps you cut down the time that it's taking to do the process, so you become more efficient. The number of processes, the number of let's say cases that you're handling per hour by the team, it improves. So all of this is going to definitely help bring down the overall cost for the organization, and also most importantly, improve the service delivery to the customer. So the customer
Absolutely.
experience of service that's coming through from an organization becomes that much more
Yeah.
interesting. And also, the whole concept of an omni-channel experience is that whether it is through a online portal, or through its or app that the customer has, or he speaks to a telecaller of the organization, or he speaks to salesperson of the organization, the approach and the information doesn't change,
Hmm.
because everybody is updated real time on what the status is, and that only happens through automation and connectivity, right? So that's the kind of all of this boils down to one thing. We have By doing all of this, we are enabling the customer experience to become that much more delightful, if I were to say.
Right. All right, that's a fantastic note to end this discussion on. Right, as Rajesh said, put the customer at the center of the experience and build your processes and automate your processes around it, and nudge your agents to be more productive and meet their goals and meet your organization's goals as well. Thank you, Rajesh. As always, very enriching conversation. I certainly learned plenty of things from this conversation.
Thank you, Roshan. Similar. It was a delight talking to you as well.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. If you'd like to know more about Vimo, please do get in touch with us. As I said, we're happy to schedule a demo session with you to take you through our Agency 360 solution, which helps you with onboarding, recruitment, engagement, and so on. We'd also be happy to share some benchmarks from our deployments in terms of what has worked for some of the large organizations. We're deployed in 60 plus organizations, as you saw, over 125,000 reps using us. So yeah, over to you, Gunjan. Thank you so much. I think you're on mute, Gunjan. It took you 45 minutes.
Just Zoom issues. But no, Roshan, Rajesh, thank you so much for the amazing, insightful discussion. For the folks who have joined us, we'll be summarizing these points and we'll be sharing a copy of the recording, the deck, as well as the summary shortly over email. And yeah, I hope you did take back, if not all, at least a few key things that we wanted to share with you. And until then, all the best. Have a great week ahead. And we'll see you soon again in another Expert Insight session. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Stay safe and take care.